Welcome to Simply Explained English. I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
So let's get started and make English learning easy. So, Eric, what are the words today?
The first word today is loose. Then we will continue with apparently and to gather. Then get by. And the final one is jump the gun.
Okay, let's start with the first word.
Our first word is loose.
Loose.
Loose. Loose is an adjective. It means that something is not tight or not firmly fixed. For example, if your shoes are too big, they are loose.
It's a useful word for describing clothes, objects, or even situations. Eric, can you give us another example sentence?
Sure, Lisa. The first example is, my tooth is loose. It means that my tooth is not firmly attached and might fall out soon.
Great. Here's another one. He wears a loose shirt. It means that his shirt is big and not tight on his body.
Remember, loose is an adjective, so it describes nouns. Don't confuse it with lose, which means not having something anymore. It sounds like lose, but lose has one O and is a verb.
Good point, Eric. Don't mix them up. Now, let's listen to a short dialogue using loose.
Be careful with that dog. The leash looks loose.
Oh no, you're right. I need to fix it.
The dog might run away if the leash is too loose.
Thanks for telling me. I don't want to lose him.
In this dialogue, loose is used to describe the leash that is not tight. And Tom doesn't want the dog to run away because the leash is loose. So, Eric, do you think loose is a common word?
Yes, Lisa. It's a common word we use in daily life.
I agree. Do you think it's more formal or informal?
Loose is neutral. It can be used in both formal and informal situations. You can use it in any situation.
That's helpful to know. When do you use loose most often, Eric?
I use it a lot when talking about clothes or objects that aren't secure. How about you, Lisa?
Same here. I also use it when describing relaxed rules or schedules, like we have a loose plan for the weekend.
That's a great example. It shows how versatile this word can be. Remember, everyone, you can use loose when you talk about things that aren't tight or fixed in place. And be careful about the spelling and meaning. It's a useful word.
Great advice. And that wraps up our explanation of loose. Let's move on to our next word.
The next word is apparently.
Apparently.
Apparently is an adverb that means something seems true. It's often used when we're talking about something we've heard from others, but we're not sure.
That's right. We use apparently when talking about the information we got from someone else or something we read.
Let's look at the first example sentence. Apparently, the train is delayed.
It means that I heard or saw that the train is late, but I'm not sure if it's true.
Good example. Here's another one. She is apparently moving to Canada next month. It means that it seems she is moving to Canada, but maybe we did not hear it directly from her.
We often use apparently at the beginning of the sentence, but we can also place it after the verb.
For example, they have apparently decided to cancel the meeting. Sometimes we put it at the end of the sentence. He didn't come to the party, apparently.
Now let's listen to a short dialogue using apparently.
Did you hear about the new cafe?
No, what about it?
Apparently, it serves the best coffee in town.
Really? We should check it out.
Yes, apparently. They also have live music on weekends.
That sounds great.
In this dialogue, apparently is used twice to share information that Emma has heard about the new cafe.
Right. She is telling Mike what she heard, but she was not there herself.
So, Eric, do you think apparently is a common adverb?
Yes, it's quite common in everyday English. People use it to share information that they are not sure about.
Is it formal or informal?
It's neutral. You can use it in both formal writing and casual conversation.
That's helpful. It can make your English sound more natural.
Definitely. Also, using apparently shows that you are careful with information. You are not saying something is 100% true.
Good point, Eric. It is polite to use apparently when you are not sure.
Exactly. So, to our listeners, try to use apparently when you want to share information you heard but are not completely sure about. It will help you communicate more effectively.
Well, that's all for apparently. Do you have any final thoughts, Eric?
Just that it's a very useful word. I encourage everyone to add it to their vocabulary.
Great advice. Let's continue to our next word.
The next word is gather.
Gather.
Gather. Gather is a verb, and it means to bring things or people together in one place. For example, you can gather your friends for a party, or you can gather information from different sources.
And we can use gather in different ways. Sometimes we say gather with around when we want people to come closer, like gather around the table. It can also mean collecting or picking things up, like gathering flowers.
Let's look at our first example sentence. We need to gather information for the project. It means that we need to collect information from different places to complete the project.
Great example. Here's another one. The children gathered around the teacher to listen to a story. This means the children came together and stood near the teacher to hear the story.
Good job, Lisa. So remember, we use gather when we are bringing things or people together. Sometimes you might see it with prepositions like around or together.
And now, let's use gather in a short dialogue to help our listeners understand it better.
Tom, we need to gather volunteers for tomorrow's event.
That's a good idea, Maria. I will gather a few people and meet you here in an hour.
Perfect. I will also gather some of the materials we need for the event.
Sounds great. Let's gather everything we need to make the event successful.
In this dialogue, gather is used to talk about collecting volunteers and supplies. It shows that gathering can mean bringing people or things together in one place.
Well, it's versatile. We use it to talk about collecting things, bringing people together, or even understanding information.
Eric, would you say gather is a common word in English?
Yes, I'd say it's quite common, especially when organizing events, meetings, or collecting information. You might hear it in both casual and more formal settings.
I agree. It works well in both formal and informal contexts.
So, to all our listeners, you can use it when you talk about collecting or bringing things or people together. It's a handy word to know.
And that's our third word for today, gather. We hope you enjoyed it.
Stay tuned because we have 2 more words to explore in this episode.
If so, let's move on to our next word.
Our next phrase is get by.
Get by.
Get by. Get by is a phrasal verb, and it means to manage or survive with what you have, especially when you do not have much. For example, you can get by on a small salary, or you can get by speaking only a little of a language when traveling.
Yes, and we often use get by when we are talking about managing with limited resources like money or skills.
Let's look at our first example sentence. Even though she doesn't have a lot of money, she can get by. It means that she manages to live without much money.
That's a good example, Eric. Here's another one. I don't speak much French, but I can get by when I travel to France. It means that the person can manage to communicate, even with limited French language skills.
Exactly. The word get by shows how someone can handle a situation when things are not perfect or they don't have everything they need.
Yes, and remember, when we use get by, we often use it with prepositions like on or with. For example, get by on $50 a week, or get by with only a few words.
Perfect. Now, let's listen to a short dialogue to help everyone understand how to use get by in conversation.
Hey, Jake. How are you doing with your new job?
It's okay, but the pay isn't great. I have to be careful with my spending, but I can get by.
I understand. When I was a student, I used to get by with very little money.
Yeah, it's not easy, but we manage.
That was a good example, Eric. It shows how get by can be used to talk about managing difficult situations.
Yes, and it also shows that getting by is often about struggles or challenges.
Now, Eric, do you think get by is common in English?
Yes, absolutely. It's very common, especially in everyday conversations. People use it often in everyday conversations about money, work, or life challenges.
And it's mostly used in informal settings. You wouldn't really use it in formal writing. It's very useful in daily life.
That's true. We use it a lot in casual conversations with friends or family.
Good point. Why do you think it's an important phrase for English learners to know?
Well, it's a realistic way to talk about managing difficulties. It's more specific than just saying, I'm okay, or I'm struggling. It expresses common life difficulties that many people can relate to.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered get by pretty well. Shall we move on to our last word today?
Yes, let's do that. Remember, listeners, even when learning English is tough, keep trying and you'll get by.
Great reminder, Eric. Okay, what is the last word?
The last word today is jump the gun.
Jump the gun.
Jump the gun. Jump the gun is an idiom that means to start something too soon or act too quickly before the right time.
That's right. When we say someone jumped the gun, they did something earlier than they should have. It comes from the idea of starting a race before the starting gun is fired.
Exactly. Let me give an example sentence. Tom jumped the gun and sent the email before the boss approved it.
It means that Tom sent the email too early, before he got permission from his boss.
Good explanation. Now it's your turn, Lisa.
Sure, here's my example. Don't jump the gun to decide to buy a new car until you've saved enough money. It means that you shouldn't make a decision to buy a new car too soon, before you have enough money.
Now, let's hear a short dialogue using the phrase, jump the gun.
Hi, John, I heard. You have already started working on the new project.
Yes, I was excited to begin. Is there a problem?
Well, you jumped the gun a bit. We haven't finalized the budget yet.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump the gun.
It's okay, but in the future, please wait for the green light before starting.
That was a good example, Lisa. It also shows how jump the gun can be used in a workplace setting.
Yes, and it also shows that jumping the gun can sometimes cause problems in professional situations.
Absolutely. So, Lisa, do you think jump the gun is a common idiom in English?
Yes, it's quite common. People use it in various situations, both personal and professional.
That's true. Is it more formal or informal?
I'd say it's more informal, but it can be used in semi-formal work situations, as we saw in the example dialogue we gave just before.
Good point. Why do you think it's an important phrase for English learners to know?
Well, it's a useful way to describe a common mistake people make. It's more colorful than just saying, started too early.
I agree. It helps learners express themselves more vividly in English.
Exactly. Well, I think we've reached the end of our podcast today. We hope you found today's episode helpful.
Thanks for listening. Keep practicing your English and stay in tune.
Bye for now.